This is the British journalist Dom Phillips. In June 2022, he disappeared without a trace in the Amazon rainforest. Phillips researched deep in the Brazilian Wild West and was on the trail of the new Amazon gold rush. Because in recent years, tens of thousands of illegal gold hunters that are coming from all parts of the country in hope for a better life are pouring into the untouched rainforest and indigenous reserves. However, wherever they appear, they leave a path of destruction behind. They clear the rainforest, poison the environment, and drive out the indigenous people. They are the spearhead of the economic development of the Amazon rainforest, and as they advance, they are cheered on by powerful backers in business and politics. Thus, they are becoming more and more unscrupulous and don't like it when anyone interferes in their illegal activities. A few weeks after his disappearance, the journalist reappeared, dead. Dom Phillips was ruthlessly murdered. This is a story of greed, violence, and helplessness. A story that, even if it seems far away, concerns us all. Because the real price of the Amazonian gold is not paid in the glamorous jewelry, but by the environment and the people deep inside the green lungs of our planet. You could call it an outright invasion, looking at the sheer number of illegal gold miners that have established themselves in protected areas in the Amazon in recent years. However, gold mining in the Amazon is nothing new. The first adventurers were already looking for gold in the rainforest decades ago. The small town Criparizzano, located inside the sanctuary of the indigenous Munduruku people, for example, is a typical gold mining town. Only 30 years ago, there were only a few wooden houses on the riverbank, but the call of gold lured more and more men into the Brazilian Wild West, and the settlement grew to a small town in the middle of the rainforest. However, due to the drastic rise in gold prices after the 2007 financial crisis, a regular army of men from all over Brazil were driven to the north and west of the country in hope for a better life. This development was further fueled by the COVID pandemic, because of which the controls by the authorities became more sparse and the gold prices soared again, thus making the illegal mining less risky and at the same time more lucrative. Nowadays, it is estimated that only inside the reserve of the indigenous Yanomami people, which is the largest of the country, there are more than 30,000 gold miners illegally mining for gold. The so-called garimpeiros are working and living inside one of the many small mines for often several weeks at a time. On average, 1 ton of dirt and stones needs to be dug up to get only 1 gram of gold out of the ground. Doing so, the gold miners are working for often 12 hours a day, earning themselves not a bad salary. Usually, the workers share in the profits, earning in only 2 weeks as much money as they would normally make in 2 months. The extracted gold gets then smuggled to one of the many small gold mining towns like Criparizzano, for example, or directly to Itaituba, the capital not just of the federal state Para, but also of the illegal gold trade. It is an ease to sell the smuggled gold to one of the many small gold dealers, and equipped with forged documents that assure its legal origin, the Amazonian gold is ready to enter the insatiable global gold market. This business model is flourishing. In the area of the Munduruku people alone, illegal gold miners are extracting an estimated 30 tons of the precise metal each year, which equates to gold worth $1.8 billion. The prosperity those dollars brought to the region can best be seen in Itaituba, where 1 cup of coffee now costs more than in Sao Paulo. However, for most men, the work inside the mining pits is their only perspective to enable their families to have a better life. Therefore, most of them don't care about the negative effects of their actions, even though those are massive. Where the suspicion of a gold vein is confirmed, the garimpeiros get to work, and the first thing that they do is to clear the forest in that area. Of course, the destruction of the rainforest is a disaster regarding climate change and the function that the Amazon fulfills as the green lungs of the world. Yet, the clearing of the Amazon rainforest is not the most devastating impact that the miners have on the environment, at least not in the short term. With the help of mercury, the gold diggers wash the gold out of the dirt masses. However, mercury is a highly toxic chemical which leads, even in the smallest amounts, to severe neurological damage. Normally, it takes 100 grams of mercury to extract only 1 gram of gold out of the mud. And even if the miners give their best in trying to prevent the toxic chemical from getting into the environment, there is always a small amount which ends up finding its way out. Unfortunately, a small amount is enough to cause a lot of damage, because only 1 gram of mercury is enough to poison hundreds of thousands of liters of fresh water, and it is estimated by the Brazilian Science Ministry that due to illegal gold mining activities, up to 141 tons of mercury get released annually into the environment. This is an ecological disaster, and in parts of the Amazon, the mercury poisoning is that bad that even from the most remote indigenous villages, there are reports of sicknesses connected to the chemical. Especially the way too high mercury concentration in many of the waterways in the Amazon imposes a huge threat to the indigenous people. This is because most of them rely heavily on fishing, and it is estimated that already 1/3 of all the fish in the Amazon region are contaminated with dangerously high amounts of mercury. Still, the indirect destruction of the livelihoods of the indigenous tribes due to the gold miners' destruction of the environment is not the only way the garimperos bring harm to the people of the Amazon. In recent years, the always growing number of gold hunters have become increasingly unscrupulous. Thus, violent clashes have become more and more frequent, and many indigenous are forcefully driven out of their own land. This development is driven by A, the increasing competition between the gold miners, and B, because the garimperos don't really have to fear to be prosecuted for their crimes. In May 2021, for example, a village of the Yanomami people was attacked by an armed mob who mindlessly shot at the villagers and burned their houses down. After this and other violent incidents, it took the government 4 whole weeks to order the national security forces to protect the Yanomami people, and even then, only because the Supreme Court forced the government to do so. Furthermore, activists who are trying to fight against the exploitation of the rainforest and the advance of the garimperos have to fear for their lives. The indigenous activist Alessandra Corab, for example, who fights for the preservation of the Amazon, is constantly threatened, and at one point even had a bounty on her head after she attacked a big mining company. Yet, Corab still got off lightly, as the deadly fate of the British journalist Dom Phillips shows us. But why does the Brazilian government let this happen? Why is the destruction of the Amazon not only silently accepted by the authorities, but even actively fueled by them? The former Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, for example, is seen by many of the garimperos as a hero and ally to their cause. He once called the delimitation of the protected zones in order to make the land accessible for economic purposes a dream. And with his openly racist and environmentally destructive statements, Bolsonaro created a climate which assured the illegal gold miners of the righteousness of their actions and even encouraged them to act more rigorously. Furthermore, Bolsonaro's views are reflected in the fact that during his time in office, the funding of environmental and control authorities was cut drastically, which consequently led to growing deforestation and made the work of the garimperos a lot easier. However, the real reason why the garimperos, who usually only find their way into the mining pits out of desperation and in hope for a better life, are supported by powerful backers in business and politics is difficult to see at first glance. The gold hunters who are willing to break the law are functioning as the spearhead of the economic development of the Amazon, which pushes deeper and deeper into the rainforest. Obviously, this is exactly what many politicians and big corporations are trying to achieve. The miners are softening the borders of the huge protected indigenous reserves, they are driving out the indigenous people and are building up first infrastructure in the untamed rainforest. Environmental associations assume that there are already up to 450 illegal gold mining settlements inside the reserves of the Yanomami and Munduruku people, which are interconnected through endlessly long dirt roads. That way, the gold hunters pave the way for the big cattle ranches, for the huge monocultures, and for large industrial-scale mining corporations, who all can't wait to enrich themselves off the rainforest. And also, due to the rampant corruption, this development is not hindered by the environmental disaster it causes. Especially at the local level, many politicians and decision-makers are directly involved into the gold business and the exploitation of the rainforest. Walmir Climaco, for example, the mayor of the gold mining hotspot Itaituba, owns several gold mines, agricultural and cattle farms himself, and therefore denies that there is any damage to the environment or the people of the Amazon caused by the garimperos. For this reason, indigenous activists and interest groups put their hope on pressure from abroad that forces the Brazilian government to protect their rights in the rainforest. At the end of October last year, Jair Bolsonaro was voted out of office and replaced by Lula. Many people have high hopes on Lula to do more for the preservation of the rainforest and the protection of the indigenous people in the Amazon, and therefore against the illegal gold miners. However, only time can tell whether those hopes will be fulfilled or not.